Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of the ATRA webinar series of 2001. I was just hoping that we can have all the attendees in. I hope they're already in. All right, so once again, welcome to the first ATRA webinar. This is the first webinar of this series this year, and this is a two-part webinar actually. So this is the first part, and this afternoon we are joined by expert speakers from different fields from the industry as well as from the academia. So without further ado, I would like to welcome everyone, our speakers and our moderator this afternoon, all the attendees who are here who have joined us here in Zoom, and those who are on Facebook. This is actually being live streamed on ATRA's Facebook page. So if you are unable to, or your friends are unable to get into the Zoom platform, please encourage them to view this webinar on ATRA's Facebook page. Likewise, we are on Lyceum of the Philippines University's CITHM Facebook page as well. So this is 2021, this is April 2021, and it's been more than a year since the world has been in chaos due to COVID. But before I speak more, let me share my slides and hopefully you can see it. All right, please give me a cue if you can see the slides. Thank you. All right, so domestic tourism is now on the rise, and this is not just in the ASEAN region, but in many parts of the world. In the ASEAN region, national tourism ministers said in a joint statement that they will intensify ASEAN's NTOs, or national tourism organizations, collaboration with other ASEAN sectors, especially in health, information, transport, and immigration, as well as ASEAN's external partners relevant international organizations and the international community. They also said that they support the development and implementation of a post-COVID-19 crisis recovery plan, building up ASEAN tourism capabilities, engaging with industry stakeholders to instill business and consumer confidence, and ensuring top-mind recall of the region in our marketing efforts and joint tourism promotion programs, with a goal to advance ASEAN as a single tourism destination. But the question is, are we ready for the re-emergence of different travel markets to the ASEAN region once international borders reopen? That's the main question. So as I said earlier, this webinar is a first of a two-part series where speakers who are experts on specific travel markets. We're invited to speak about the travel patterns and behavior preferences of these specific travelers who visit the ASEAN region, and the opportunities and challenges that these travelers face in ASEAN, and what ASEAN member states face in welcoming back these travelers. So as I said, this is the first part, and the second part will be on the 6th of May. So stand by for more information on that one. So without further ado, I would like to again remind everyone that we are live on Facebook, both on the ATRA Facebook page and LPU CITHM Facebook page as well. My name is Jenny Panchal. I'm from James Cook University, and I am one of the board members, recently elected board members of the ASEAN Tourism Research Association. I'm based in Australia right now, but I do represent both Australian and Singapore campuses of James Cook University. So first of all, what is ATRA? Well, ATRA is an association. It's the ASEAN Tourism Research Association that is mainly focused on getting different higher learning institutions together. And more recently, we have, of course, invited members of the industry to partner with us in developing tourism strategies in the region, establishing a network of tourism research professionals and research clusters in the region. We also intend to develop links between ASEAN researchers in different parts of the region and provide recognized multi-site resource and expertise related to ASEAN tourism. We are an accredited civil service organization, and this was just a couple of years ago, so it's a recent recognition, and we take pride in the work that we do as an association. As I said earlier, we just had our election, which was, I think, just a month ago, and we do have a new set of officers. We have Professor Dr. Nityanantan Ariragavan, who is the president, and he's based in at Taylor's University, which is the headquarters of ATRA. Our vice president is Assistant Professor Dr. Ponpisinu Promsivalok from Prince of Songkla University in Thailand. And our Secretary General is none other than Professor Datatseri Dr. Victor Wee, who is also one of our speakers this afternoon. Our honorary treasurer is Dr. Bhuvaneshwaran Kunasekaran, who is also based at Taylor's University. The rest of the board is made up of my esteemed colleagues from different universities across the ASEAN region, including Associate Professor Devi Kasar at the University of Panchal in Indonesia, Dr. Conrado Inigo, who is in the Philippines at the University of the Visayas. There's Dr. Lee Min Fong from Hoa Sen University in Vietnam, Ms. Shalimir Balde Avila from RX International in the Philippines, and Mr. Agus Riyadi from Trisakti Institute of Tourism in Indonesia. So this afternoon's moderator, I am your host, and this afternoon's moderator is none other than Dr. Lilibeth Aragon, who is currently the Dean of the Lyceum of the Philippines University Manila's College of International Tourism and Hospitality Management. She has extensive background in the cruise line industry, having worked on board various fleets of P&O cruises in the UK for years. She's also contributed to the continuous movement of training regulations and competence-based learning materials and assessment for the ASEAN training regulations and skills development. Dr. Aragon is also an accreditor for tourism, hospitality, and graduate programs of the Philippine Association Colleges and Universities Commission on higher education as part of the NCR's quality assurance team. Dr. Aragon holds a Bachelor of Science degree in tourism, Master in Business Administration, and a doctorate degree in Business Administration from Polytechnic University of the Philippines. She also holds a high degree certificate from the Wine and Spirits Education Trust of London. She's a certified hospitality educator and a trainer by American-based company American Hospitality Lodging and Education Incorporated, and also completed this certified guest service professional course. She currently serves as the Association of Administrators in Hospitality, Hotel, and Restaurant Management Education Institutions in the Philippines as the Internal Vice President, and the Philippine Association of Researchers for Tourism and Hospitality as board member. Currently, she's a board of director of the International Center of Excellence in Tourism and Hospitality Education, also known as the ICE, an international accrediting agency based in Australia. Dr. Aragon is an ASEAN Master Trainer, the first batch to represent the Philippine delegation last 2012 held at Bali, Indonesia. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our moderator this afternoon, Dr. Lilibeth Aragon. Dr. Aragon.
Thank you very much for that generous introduction, Dr. Jenny. Mabuhay from the Philippines, and welcome to another interesting webinar series brought to you by the ASEAN Tourism Research Association, or ATRA, entitled ASEAN Beyond COVID-19, Are We Ready for the Chinese and Muslim Travel Markets? The Muslim and Chinese travel market is one of the most lucrative and one of the most rapidly growing market segments in the industry. It is also one of the world's highest spending tourist markets. Therefore, it is vital that destinations, businesses, and travel-related entities take the needs of this market segment into consideration when devising business models and plans. By engaging with these dynamic market segments, destinations and travel-related businesses can benefit greatly. The untapped Muslim travel market has a great potential for industry players with a wealth of business opportunities and revenue streams in the future. The double-digit growth of the Chinese outbound market is very promising. This confidence is based on certain factors that will continue to boost outbound tourism, such as China's population size, increasing income, the low ratio of passport holders to the whole population, the qualified public and private sector travel services by destinations, increased destination promotions, visa facilitations, and a lot more. Meanwhile, the market is changing. With the rich outbound travel experience and the wide application of smart mobile technology and communication, both the Chinese and Muslim tourist expectations at destinations are far more acute since travelers today are more into lifestyle experiences. This calls for a better understanding of not only the market, but also the psyche of the average traveler, whose cultural and social background have a strong bearing on tourism demand, especially post-pandemic. For this webinar series, our great lineup of speakers will cover areas grounded on the significance of Chinese and Muslim markets in the tourism and hospitality sectors, characteristics and travel behaviors of both the Chinese and Muslim markets, factors influencing choice of travel destinations, market behavior post-pandemic, travel impacts brought about by the pandemic, insights on how to jumpstart travel, travel trends and destinations post-pandemic, destination and risk management plans, recovery and beyond, and of course, how do we adjust in the new normal and how we convert it to the best normal possible. I'm sure all of you are excited to get to know our speakers. And with that, I give the floor back to you, Dr. Jenny.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I am not sure because I cannot see the rest of the attendees in this webinar, and I'm not sure how many of our board members are actually present here, but I would like to take this opportunity to say hello to everyone and welcome our fellow board members, ATRA board members to this webinar. Yeah, let's move on to our first speaker. I'll stop sharing. Okay, our first speaker this afternoon is none other than Mr. Fazal Bahardeen. After an 18-year corporate career, Fazal decided to venture into entrepreneurship. Having experienced the difficulty of finding basic faith-based needs as a frequent Muslim traveler in 2008, he founded Crescent Rating in Singapore in a quest to make travel easier for Muslims. Over the next 11 years, Crescent Rating has grown to key markets across Middle East, South Asia, Western Europe, and the rest of Asia. It is now the world's leading authority on halal travel, providing insights, research, consultancy, training, and rating services to every sector of the tourism industry, from government bodies to hotels. He was listed among the 20 Life Power List 2016 of Singapore's Straits Times and recognized as one of the top 50 leaders of the Islamic economy by Islamica 500. Fazal completed the executive program from Stanford University and National University of Singapore Strategic Leadership Development Program from Ashridge Management School and International Management in Telecoms Industry from London Business School. He has an international master's in management from Management School of Lyon, master's degree in computer applications, and bachelor's degree in telecommunications from Beijing University of Post and Telecommunications. He also has a diploma in Islamic banking and finance from the International Islamic University of Malaysia. Very impressive. And we are very pleased, honored, and it's a privilege, truly a privilege, to have Mr. Fazal Bahardin with us this afternoon. Thank you, sir. Take it away.
To unmute myself. Hi, thanks, Dr. Jenny, for the generous introduction. Thanks also for Atra, and thanks for Dr. Beth for having me today. I am, as you just mentioned, I'm going to talk a bit about the Muslim travel market. Before I do that, I'm going to very briefly talk about the general recovery and readiness of the industry, of destinations, based on one of the reports that we released with MasterCard last year. And then I will go into a little bit of the Muslim travel market. So let me start with this one. So I think all of us know the current situation, but in order to put some perspective to what I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to remind ourselves where we were and where we are going. I mean, 2019, if you remember 2019 still, we were, the tourism industry was facing a different set of challenges. At least we were, looking at different set of challenges about over-tourism, sustainable tourism, overcrowding. Our set of, those were our biggest concern. However, in 2020, everything changed, and that was overtaken by the pandemic, the COVID, the lockdowns, and all that. And we are now in 2021, and the biggest concern that we have is, when will travel get back to some level of normalcy? And even when it gets back, what will the behavior be of travelers? And we have different set of challenges we are facing now. How do you get visitor confidence back? How do you restore trust? How do you safeguard health? So we have so much of unknowns out there. And that's the reason that we actually released the report last year with MasterCard, which I'll talk about our relationship with MasterCard and reports a bit later. We released what we call the Travel Readiness Report. And generally our reports are very, data driven and, and all that. But this particular report, because so much of uncertainties out there, we were looking at scenarios, and we were trying to provide models, tools, frameworks to the industry so that they can use these tools and start, developing their own recovery paths. I'll come back to this again. You can download all the reports that I'm going to talk about on crescentrating.com. Just go to reports and publications, and you can download a lot of reports that we have been releasing the last few years. So I'm going to very briefly touch on two sort of models or scenarios that we developed for this report, and then I'll go into the Muslim market. So one of so we tried to identify, I would say, 4 recovery phases to growth. The first one was containment, where all the destinations were trying to contain the COVID-19 situation. The next phase that we identified was the recovery phase, where services gradually start opening up, domestic travel starts to resume. And then the next phase is normalization, where COVID development, COVID cure is out there, vaccinations programs start beginning to happen, and then some level of intra-ASEAN. So this report actually was focused on ASEAN. So in some level of intra-ASEAN travel might take place, and then eventually we go into a growth phase where international travel will open. It's not as clear cut as this, of course. These are models. Yeah, I think what's clear is that in ASEAN, we probably, you know, most countries are in recovery phase or at least going into the normalization phase. So we are seeing travel bubbles happening and things like that. I think it's good to keep this in mind as we plan for future of travel. So those are some of the, and if you go to the report, we have all the assumptions that we have taken for each of those recovery phases. And based on those recovery phases, we also plotted some scenarios when it comes to numbers. So how much will the market recover? And then we had these three scenarios. The positive scenario was 94% of 2019 levels can be reached by the middle of 2021, which is definitely not going to happen. The pessimistic scenario was that we were going to get back to only about 31% of the 2019 levels, which we don't want to happen. Nobody wants that scenario, but however, that is still a possibility. It's not, we are not out of the woods of that. The most plausible scenario, we projected, this was middle of last year, is that we'll recover to 71% by 2019, by the middle of 2022. I think this is still hope. I think it's still a possibility, as it all depends on how the vaccinations go on around the world. So I think this is still a possibility. I think all what I wanted to sort of say is that, you know, there is hope that later part of 2021, early part of 2022, some level of what we call travel normalcy can happen, and which brings me to today's topic. So time to prepare for the next stage of travel. I mean, you know, as destinations, it takes time for us to, you know, we were completely stopped. Most of the destinations had restricted their activities for almost 12, 16 months. It takes time, even if you want to prepare for next year. So it's time to start preparing. I think Dr. Chen is going to talk about the Chinese market, and Dr. V, I assume as well. I'm going to just focus on the Muslim travel market for the next 10, 15 minutes. So Muslim travel market. So as I said, we do a lot of reports each year, mainly with MasterCard. And this is our 2019 report called the Muslim Travel, Global Muslim Travel Index. This is our premier report. I'll talk a little bit about the report itself maybe later very quickly. But in this report, we always update the numbers, market numbers for the Muslim market. And if you see, the market has grown from some 25 million travelers in year 2000 to about 140 million travelers in 2018. And our projections for 2020 were 160 million travelers. Of course, that did not happen for reasons beyond the Muslim market itself, as we know. However, you know, we had projected also that the market will grow up to about 230 million travelers by 2026. Now, will that happen, or will that be a 230 million by 2026? I think it's still not very sure where we will get to. We will update those numbers sometime middle of this year when we release our next report that we are planning to release, Global Muslim Travel Index 2021, sometime in the middle of this year, and then we'll update our projections at that time. However, having said that, I think what I wanted to impress upon is that no matter what the growth path is, Muslim market will continue to be a key player in that growth sector. I mean, as the Chinese market also, I believe, simply because of many things. One of the key things, of course, is the Muslim population. There is no doubt about that. By 2030, Muslims will be about 2.3 billion. That's we're getting close to 28, 29% of the world's population by that time. And more importantly, also, if you see the median age of Muslim population, they are 27. We're probably one of the youngest if you compare by different categorization, and especially if you look at the faith-based categorization, you know, they are one of the youngest. 60% are below 35 years. So you have a growing number of population. You have a younger population, and also some of those countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Turkey. These countries are also a fast-growing middle class in these countries. So all put together, Muslim market will continue to play a huge role in whatever growth projection that we are talking about. We don't know exactly what the growth projection is, but it doesn't matter. Whatever the growth projection is, I think the Chinese and the Muslim market are going to play a key role. I think one misunderstanding I wanted to clarify before I go into a bit more detail is that Muslims travel for like everybody else. You know, they travel for leisure, they travel for VFR, they travel for business. You know, they explore the world like any other traveler. They are not traveling, let me go and eat halal food in Philippines, or let me go and pray in a mosque in Australia. You know, it's not why they are traveling, right? They're traveling like any other traveler. Only thing is that they want to do that while preserving their values and keeping their identity. You know, so like any traveler, they have their basic requirements. The difference is when it comes to the Muslim traveler, some of their basic requirements are faith related, but that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, these are basic requirements. If you want the Chinese travelers, they have a set of basic requirements that you need to take care of. If you want the Russian travelers, they have a certain requirements. Similarly, Muslim travelers have certain basic requirements, and those requirements are, a lot of them are really connected to the faith, to their faith. I mean, I wanted to just highlight this particular point. So we did a report on Muslim millennials about a couple of years ago, and that's another report that you can download also with MasterCard. If you look, and we wanted to analyze what's the difference in terms of the behavior patterns of Muslim millennials and other millennials. And the reality is that many things are very common, in terms of their travel behavior. The only difference is that when it comes to Muslim millennials, they have a set of faith-based needs that they want to look out for when they travel. So when it comes to general travel, most travelers, whether they are Muslims or non-Muslim, they are probably more defined by their generation rather than their faith itself. Of course, faith has a role to play, but in terms of their travel behavior itself, it's more about their demographics and where they come from rather than anything else. So what are these faith-based needs? I'm going to briefly touch. So we have been, we produced this faith-based needs model in 2009. We called it 1.0, and then we updated it in 2019, which is now we call it faith-based needs 2.0. We have classified into 3 areas need to have, which are really important if you're a destination to provide these kind of facilities. Halal food is the key part of it, and then to be easily accessible prayer facilities. I really don't have the time to go into details of each of these within these 15-20 minutes. But you can always visit crescentrating.com, and we have plenty of material on these things. Download our reports. Water-friendly washrooms, which I think some of you are probably aware. In this part of the world, we use water when we go to the toilet to clean ourselves. And of course, Muslims don't want to go to a place where there is Islamophobia. So these, what we, through number of research, number of surveys, is identified as some of the key requirements if you want to target the Muslim market to have in the destination. Good to have our services catering to the month of Ramadan. So actually the fasting month, we are currently in the 3rd day of the fasting month. Social causes, the more and more, especially younger population travelers, including Muslims, are interested in social causes as they travel as well. They're looking for local Muslim experiences. And then nice to have, which is, certain segments, sub-segments of the Muslim market are looking for services and facilities which do not have what we call non-halal, which are things that Muslims are not allowed to either consume, participate, get involved, or things like that. For instance, some Muslims look for hotels which don't serve alcohol, for instance, right? As an example. And then the recreational facilities with privacy. What it means is some Muslims are looking for like gyms where it is, there is privacy for females or males and things like that. So these are what we call the faith-based needs model that we developed. And it's not very, everybody doesn't fit into this directly, of course. And also we have sort of tried to categorize the Muslims into strictly practicing, and less practicing Muslims. There's a wide, variety of Muslims, I would say. And for strictly practicing Muslims, some of these things are very important. For less practicing Muslims, some of these things are not very important. So that's very quickly on that. And what we also talk, when we talk to destinations, what we say, tell them is that these requirements should be, incorporated into the whole value chain of the key, at least in the key touch points of the traveler's journey. It's not that only a hotel has certain services or the destination, I mean the attraction itself, but you need to try and have these services across the touch points so that Muslims can, they're not, as I said, they're not here to enjoy your halal food or pray. They're here to enjoy your tourism products, but they will be distracted from enjoying your travel products if they can't find their basic needs. That's what it is all about, right? So they're not homogeneous. They're not homogeneous. You need to, I mean, I said the faith-based needs are a little bit, it's across different, it doesn't matter where they come from, but still you need to, if you look at the Middle East, GCC stands for, Gulf countries, Middle Eastern countries, they have a set of their own, travel patterns. You need to understand them better. Southeast Asian Muslims have, certain nuances. Western European Muslims have certain. So I think I just want to have a disclaimer as well. It's not that every Muslim behaves the same when it comes to both faith-based needs and your. Again, Gen Z millennials will behave differently. If they're, how they travel will also, you need to understand how they travel because their behavior pattern changes. So all this, just to show that you need to look at different things before and get a deeper understanding of the different profiles. I mean, we do this exercise. Okay, millennials traveling with family, practicing millennials, going for leisure from JCC on mid-tier, they have a profile, they have a travel behavior which may be slightly different from other profiles. So wanted to sort of highlight that point to you. I wanted to, just on that, for instance, if you look at the two, let's say Muslim millennial travelers versus general Muslim travelers. So, you see that general Muslim travelers and Muslim travelers, they have I would say, a common set of requirements. They want halal food, they're traveling for leisure, the safety and security is important. However, they have a different set of other behaviors. Millennials are budget conscious, they probably do multiple trips. If you are a general Muslim traveler and a family traveler, you probably have a greater spending power, especially if you're a family traveler, you're looking for travel agents as well, offline travel agents. Muslim travel, millennials are not looking for, travel agents to travel with, at least pre-2020. It maybe in the future, it's a different ball game. We don't know yet. So, you need to understand much more deeper how these profiles. So in terms of understanding deeper, so we have been releasing reports in 2015 with MasterCard. So we have a whole set of reports here. Muslim women, we have done a report on specifically focusing on Muslim women travelers in 2019, digital Muslims' behavior on digital platforms, Muslim millennial travel, Muslim business travel. So a number of reports, and this is the report that we released, Travel Readiness, in last July. We just released about 1 month ago, a specific report on the halal food lifestyle in Singapore. And our main report, of course, is this one, which is called the Global Muslim Travel Index. So what's the Global Muslim Travel Index? That's my last couple of slides. Since 2015, we have been releasing this report where we rank 130 destinations on how Muslim friendly they are, based on what we have developed as ASES model, where we look at number of data sets in terms of access to the destination, in terms of how the destination it communicates, the environment of the destination when it comes to safety, faith restriction, and the services provided in terms of core services like halal food, hotels, in core needs and core services, unique. So we look at almost 40 plus data points to analyze and rank 130 destinations. So we have been releasing since 2015. 2020, we did not release because of the COVID situation, and we are going to release that in 2021, which is a MasterCard crescent rating report in probably in August this year, or July, August this year. My last slide, some resources for those who are interested to know more. We have another platform, which is Halal Trip, which is our consumer platform. So if you want to serve your customers with all some of those Muslim friendly things that you need, prayer times, where to find halal food, where to find mosques. So we have an app that you can use it to either for yourselves or to your clients. And then we have a whole set of services and products on the Crescent Rating platform. We of course work with many different tourism boards across the world. And with that, I think that brings to my closure. Thank you very much, and happy to take your questions later, Dr. Beth.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fasal Wardin, for that information-packed presentation on how ASEAN can prepare for a post-COVID Muslim travel market. So from the presentation of Dr. Fasal, it can be gleaned that the Muslim population of the world is growing rapidly. Therefore, several countries are seeing an increase in Muslim visitors even before the pandemic. And of course, it's going to continue on even post-pandemic. As the consumers increase, so does the need for increased production. And this particular market contributes to tourism in any industry, which in turn generates billions of revenues annually. As such, training programs should be designed to produce well-trained and competent personnel to suit the particular needs of the Muslim travelers, which will be beneficial for the tourism and hospitality industry. Several scenarios were presented in this presentation, but one positive projection is that the reopening of travel businesses slowly but surely. By the time we have to be able to prepare to accommodate the Muslim market, awareness in the faith-based needs of the significant market will surely go a long way. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Fasal, and it's back to you, Dr. Jenny.
Thank you for that very insightful message, sir. I think, as I told you before, the first time I got hold of your report, I was very impressed. And so inviting you here is a different level of actually engaging with you in person, virtually, of course. And we are very, very grateful for having listened to you this afternoon. So you did say that the Muslim travel market, as well as the Chinese travel market, would be the key players regardless of the growth projection in the market segment or in the travel market segment. So to talk about the Chinese market this afternoon, I'd like to introduce our second speaker, and it's none other than a good friend of mine, of course, Dr. Ting-Jen Chen, whom we also call Dr. Jane or Jane. So Jane is a senior lecturer of tourism at James Cook University here in Australia. She studied at Xi'an International Studies University in China and then completed a joint double degree with honors in tourism management from James Cook University in Townsville, Australia. She completed her PhD also at James Cook University. Her main research interests include tourism seasonality in Asia Pacific, tourist experiences of the Chinese outbound market, travel vlogging experiences, and cross-discipline research. She has published several journal articles and conference papers in the topics that I just mentioned across tourism, economics, and marketing disciplines. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Dr. Ting-Jen Chen.
Thank you, Jenny, for your introduction. And can you see my slide clear?
Yes.
And it's my pleasure to be here to share with you some of my views on the Chinese tourists to Asian region. My focus is on the Chinese outbound markets. So I will talk about who they are, in which parts of China they are from, where are their favorite overseas destinations, particularly in our Asian region, and when are they likely to visit and why they visit. As the largest source markets for the international outbound tourism, there have been many myths about this Chinese market. So we will try to reveal some realities and summarize the key trends for this growing market. Many destinations are putting their eyes on this market, eager to know how these markets respond to the pandemic and act post-pandemic. So we will have some discussions on the impacts of the pandemic on the Chinese outbound market and try to see what possible ways our Asian destinations could work to regain our popularity for this market. So this is my plan. And when we talk about the Chinese markets, the immediate response is, wow, this is a huge market and they spend a lot of money at the destinations. But who compose this market? Where do they go? What do they do? And why they do so? These kinds of information is of greater interest to the destination management. And so let's, by understanding that, they can tailor their tourism projects to approach these markets and meet their demands. In terms of who they are, that we look at the gender first. Females traveling abroad outnumber males with a ratio of 53 versus 47. Destination management organizations should take good notes of this important fact, as it has a direct bearing on marketing and promotions, as well as on product development. In terms of age, the millennials, similar to the Muslim market, the millennials dominate with 55% of the market, followed by those between 35 and 44 years old. On the other hand, senior citizens, those who are over 60 years old, and the children under 15 years old constitute 6% and 5.6% respectively. The needs, aspirations, and travel requirements of each age group must be fully understood, as they have a different set of demands, which have a huge impact on the market. 1/3 of the Chinese outbound travelers have monthly pre-tax income of between $700 and $1,100 which put them into the category of the middle class, while almost another 1/3 can be categorized as the fluent. And these are the people who are more likely to afford overseas travel. Where are these people located in China? Chinese outbound tourism is mostly generated in the wealthy areas in the east and southeast of China. To be specific, the 5 highly recognized urban agglomerations of Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, the Yangtze River Delta centered on Shanghai, the Pearl River Delta centered on Guangzhou and Shenzhen, and Chengdu, Chongqing are agglomerations, and the city clusters along the middle reaches of the Yangtze River are the main origins of the outbound travel. They constitute the main catchment areas of the Chinese outbound tourism, with the first 3, the Beijing, the Shanghai, and the Guangzhou, being in the dominant positions. And where do they go? The top 10 destinations for the Chinese outbound travel in 2018 were Thailand, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, United States, Singapore, Malaysia, Cambodia, Russia, and Indonesia. And we can see among these top 10 destinations, 6 of them are from our Asian region. So in 2019, the number of tourist arrivals in the Asian region from China reached approximately 32 million. This was a significant increase from 2010, about 5 million. And Thailand is the top destination, which occupies 28% of the market, followed by Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia. But other destinations are also, the numbers to other destinations also increased recently before COVID. When are they likely to travel overseas? Annual leave is not common for most of the Chinese. Therefore, the public holidays are the best time for the Chinese to travel. 3 weeks around Chinese New Year festival, the Labor Day and the National Day, also known as Golden Weeks, are important holidays for the Chinese to take long-haul trips. And also school summer vacation is another peak time for Chinese family to travel. The destination managers and the business should plan for and integrate the peak times into their year, having a good sense of this seasonality pattern, including associated practice customs and rules will help the destination welcome and make the trips memorable for the Chinese at these holiday times. I always remember my experience at Singapore last January, just a couple of days before the Chinese New Year. My family and I were so impressed with the traditional New Year atmosphere there in Singapore, which we believe they do better than what we have in China. More than half of the Chinese tourists consider traveling abroad as no longer a critical consumption decision that needs long-time discussion and planning with family members. For most of the Chinese tourist attractions are the most influential factor when choosing a destination. And many tourists are also price sensitive. Delicious food and colorful activities can help to attract Chinese tourists. Transport and accommodation are essential elements of travel, but they have less influence on their decision making. Leisure and sightseeing are the predominant feature of Chinese outbound tourism. Family bonds are an overriding feature in Chinese outbound travel, with 51% traveling with family and only 13% traveling alone, which is closely tied to the collectivist culture in China. This is also related to the safety concerns of outbound travelers. Traveling with families or friends can also increase their psychological security. Let's look at the mix of the Chinese outbound tourism market and the new realities. Chinese tourists have a diverse appetite for outbound trips, dispelling the myth that this group prefers to take a trip only to partake in shopping. When planning a trip, Chinese outbound tourists desire places that offer natural scenery, high value for money, and family-friendly locals. And although the importance of these factors varies by destination, just as the appetites for the outbound trips are diverse, so too are the needs of tourists once they reach their destinations. Research findings reveal that visiting landmarks is no longer the #1 reason for traveling to a destination. Instead, it is found that tourists have a more open mind and they want more, local experience, whether it is learning about the local culture or to visit some niche destinations. The most popular reason for Chinese tourists to travel is to recharge. Travelers going to Southeast Asia generally prioritize unplugging from stressful urban life and relaxing with family and friends. Digital transaction methods are a must. Chinese travelers are the top spenders in most of the destinations they visit. This rise in expenditure is valuable to industry operators, but only if they are able to capture it. One common assumption uncovered through research is that Chinese outbound tourists only want to pay with cash. However, the Chinese travelers are more inclined to use digital channels to get information and make bookings for accommodations and activities. Indeed, business without digital apps and mobile payment options in place are likely to miss out on tourist dollars. Chinese travelers going to Southeast Asia tend to prefer local online resources to book trips, such as sea trips and phone compared with tourists to other destinations such as Europe, who are more likely to use the foreign services such as Expedia or TripAdvisor. In addition, platforms such as Alipay and WeChat Pay have become the norm for transactions among travelers. less than 45 years old, with an average usage rate of 43%. Therefore, based on the preferences among young generations, the current payment methods offered by Apple Pay, UnionPay, and the traditional cash transactions won't be sufficient in the coming years. In summary, some key trends of these markets include experience is becoming more and more important, diverse travel needs, longer stays, and farther destinations. Package tours on the rise, particularly the high-end package. Fine dining is highly valued. Digital transaction methods are a must. Friends and family play a vital role in travel decision and their travel experiences. And apps is now used extensively as online travel agency websites such as Ctrips see the top choice overall for making trip preparation. The global tourism has been experiencing the temporal disruption since the beginning of 2020. And the Chinese market is the first one to be in this disruption, as borders of many countries are still closed currently. It is unknown how this market will act post-pandemic. Many researchers have been studying the Chinese tourist perceptions towards overseas travel after COVID, aiming to predict what the market will do so that the destinations can be prepared. So by summarizing the research findings, there are three key perceptions regarding their overseas travel intentions post-pandemic. First, the Chinese tourists hold a strong perception of COVID-19. Tourism stakeholders should effectively reduce Chinese tourist perception on COVID-19. For example, the local governments should strengthen tourism-related public health safety management and establish a mechanism for the prevention and control for post-pandemic normalization. Tourism managers should make full use of social media to publicize the safety and quality of the local tourism environment. Secondly, they do not have high post-pandemic outbound travel intentions. Tourism stakeholders should try to influence Chinese residents' attitude. For example, by introducing local, unique, and attractive characteristics so that they may identify with the feeling that traveling abroad after this pandemic will be pleasant and valuable, and increase their subjective norms. For example, tourism operators and managers should try their best to provide tourists with satisfactory and safe experiences to increase their likelihood of spreading positive word of mouth. Destination operators should also take some other ways to encourage Chinese tourists to recommend and share their experiences with others on social networking sites, such as offering gifts and discounts to tourists if they share their experiences. The last but not the least, they are more likely to adopt pharmaceutical interventions when traveling abroad after the pandemic. Recognizing non-pharmaceutical intervention as an adaptive behavior among tourists can provide significant implications for local governments and tourism sectors. For instance, tourism marketers should publicize the role and necessity of non-pharmaceutical intervention and encourage tourists to adopt such behavior. Destination governments and tourism managers should publish a series of guidebooks for non-pharmaceutical interventions and provide hygiene and information kiosks to serve tourists' personal protective behaviors. And tourism enterprise and hospitality services should distribute masks for tourists and provide them with portable disinfectants and hand sanitizers. Furthermore, tourist attractions and transport systems should strengthen their monitoring of the health and for people to help tourists adopt better personal and non-pharmaceutical interventions. And I believe the presenters after me, they will provide more insights into what the destinations can do to accommodate the tourists post-pandemic. 5 post-pandemic trends are summarized for the Chinese outbound market. First of all, their demand for outbound travel is still there. Although it is not as strong as before at the beginning, it takes time to recover, but we believe the demand is there. The fully independent tourists will be the first segment to recover, but the high-end personalized package tours are also gaining popularity. At the beginning, the short distance destinations are their first choices. So the neighboring countries, such as Vietnam, will be on their top list. And they will also prefer the island resort style destinations, looking to experience nature and the local food. Overall, due to their strong perceptions of COVID, they will give priority to those destinations that show effective pandemic controls, implement health and safety protections, and issue simplified visa policies. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of 2 characteristics. One is referring to danger, and the second one represents opportunity. May this crisis be an opportunity for us to think of what we have, what we cherish, and what we would like to share with others. Also think about the relationship in the past, change our old practice for the best, dream and give space to the projects we never had time to develop it, and then something new and make plans for a healthier and more conscious future. As a researcher, we always use a model or a framework to assist our analysis of our research. When I prepared this webinar, the CAGE framework came into my mind. This framework looks at 4 dimensions: the cultural distance, administrative distance, geographic distance, and economic distance. It offers a broader view of distance and provides another way of thinking about location and the opportunities and the commitment risk. I may run out of time to dig into details, but I would like to highlight couples of key points here. From the cultural perspective, while ASEAN is usually the first destination for Chinese travelers when they opt for further destinations, the language barrier is more substantial when compared with destinations such as Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Therefore, travelers are more inclined to seek out self-guided tours rather than organize the trip on their own. And in the social norms area, the collectivistic values shared across most of our Asian countries, including China and ASEAN, makes the Chinese feel a sense of belonging to the same group, which further creates their psychological security. And this psychological security is further enhanced by their perceptions on the government policies in the administrative distances, where they believe most of the Asian governments share similar values on carrying out policies to prevent and control the pandemic. And so all this will encourage them to consider Asian destinations once the borders are open. The geographic advantage is very dominant for the Asian destination, which most of them are within 6 hours flights. This makes it easier to be the first choices for the Chinese to spend their Golden Week holidays there. And of course, the border tourism, Vietnam in particular, is another strong area to help tourism recover. And Asian countries do not only have experience in fighting the epidemic, but also have achieved economic recovery after the epidemic. Tourism recovery in this area is also optimistic. Some Asian countries are considering creating travel bubbles with their neighbors to safely resume travel ahead of vaccine. The Asian tourism leaders propose creating travel bubbles, such as one between Thailand and Myanmar and China, to encourage regional travel. This includes the need to develop standardized measures for issues such as health insurance. Furthermore, tourism sectors can consider untapped tourism as a new tourism paradigm to minimize tourists' perceived risk. Untapped means consumer behavior that minimize face-to-face contact. For example, hotels can offer family exclusive dining rooms or room services of the breakfast buffet, and tourism sectors can make full use of digital technology to reduce unnecessary contact. Smart tourism could also enhance the tourist experience. Visitation data such as tourist time spent at attractions will facilitate the queue management. And Generation Z millennials and the non-family groups may become the first tourists to travel overseas after the pandemic. Research shows that the majority of Chinese travelers under 35 years old had voted for a different form of tourism, more respectful of the visited communities and of nature, as well as avoiding mass tourism destinations and large cities, and not wishing to visit certain countries and regions that are at risk from a health point of view. However, we should acknowledge that there would also be a significant segment of people, regardless of their age, who had the luxury of time during the lockdown to reflect the meaning of life. They now appreciate how fragile and transient life and nature is. And perhaps for them, travel desires change and they may become more interested in responsible tourism. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tingzhen Shen, or Dr. Jane, for giving us a walkthrough, a very extensive discussion on the ASEAN tourism focused on the Chinese market. And it was highly emphasized that the unprecedented growth of the Chinese tourism market, driven by the strong economic performance and increasing disposable income, has seen a boom in outbound tourism, enjoyed by more and more Chinese citizens. China has been the largest tourism source market in the world since 2012, growing at a fast rate during the last decades. And more than half of the Chinese tourists consider traveling abroad as no longer a critical consumption decision that needs a long time discussion and planning with family members. So that's a very good potential. And of course, we thank our second speaker for giving us a walkthrough on the realities and the myths about Chinese travelers. Of course, China occupies the privileged position of the leading tourism outbound market in the world, both in departure numbers as well as total expenditure. So I'm sure you'll all agree that that's a huge potential. Thank you very much, Dr. Jane. Dr. Jenny. Dr. Jenny, I think you're on mute.
Okay, I always forget to unmute myself. I was just thanking Dr. Jane once again for that meaningful presentation on the Chinese travel market. And it's, I hope that our audience this afternoon are learning a lot of things in this webinar, because I certainly do. I've been frantically writing down notes. I've seen Jane's slides before, but the commentary, the speech she has is actually very rich and insightful. And what got me was those the Chinese character for crisis. And that, to me, that was actually very meaningful. And she said, in every crisis lies the seed of opportunity. And that's something that we should pick up, not only as researchers, but also as national tourism organizations, as tourism and hospitality businesses in the ASEAN region. Thank you once again, Jane. Right, now for our third speaker, we have our third speaker this afternoon is Professor Datuk Seri Dr. Victor Wee. Dr. Victor Wee is currently a professor at Taylor's University and Secretary General of the ASEAN Tourism Research Association, or ATRA. He started his career at the Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department in Malaysia. He served as Secretary General of the Ministry of Tourism from 2004 to 2008, and as Chairman of Tourism Malaysia from 2009 to 2013. At an international level, he chaired the program as a program committee at the United Nations World Tourism Organization. He undertook consultancy assignments for the government of Malaysia, UNWTO, and the UNDP. He obtained his PhD in economics from Bristol University, United Kingdom. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Professor Datuk Seri Dr. Victor Wee.
Well, thank you very much, Chani. I will thank you for your introduction. I will just share my slides. Okay, is it okay? Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, we can see your slides, sir.
Yeah, so I will actually be talking about the more general macro issues concerning travel after the COVID pandemic, and even looking at issues relating to the vaccines and all and related issues, and what could we do in order to make sure that travel gets back on a firmer footing after COVID-19. First, I think we should look at the world economic performance in order to give us some kind of an understanding of what could possibly, take place this year and beyond. Well, according to the IMF, they have just revised this year's growth rate, and the global growth is expected to be at 6% this year, compared to the contraction of 4.4% last year. And recovery across and within countries diverge, with potential for economic damage from the crisis. So if you look at this diagram, you could see this is the sources from IMF. The countries with the dark blue colors tends to be growing at about 68%, 8 to 10%, whereas those in lighter blue tends to have much slower growth. But all of these countries seems to register some kind of growth, which means that this year would be a fairly good story. But we know that travel comes from disposable income. So as a result of the pandemic, many businesses have gone broke, and the economic damage sustained by the pandemic would mean that fewer people can afford to travel compared to the pre-pandemic days, at least in the short term. So this is another telling diagram, which shows that actually as a result of the pandemic, there was severe economic contraction, which results in the reduction of the combined size of the middle and upper middle classes in 2020. About 150 million people in the middle as well as the upper middle have actually slipped downwards, right? And this is the first pullback in almost 3 decades. And the pandemic has also increased extreme poverty by 60 million, bringing us back, rolling back about 5 years. That was the position for the world in 2015 to 2016. So the pandemic itself has really sustained damage on all our economies. And this is just looking at the picture in the next 5 years as the main contributors of world growth. Here we could see that China will contribute about 1/5 of the global growth for the next 5 years. And because today we're looking at Chinese tourists, so this certainly would be a good story for outbound travel from China. And United States will contribute about 14.8%, India 8%, Japan 3%, Germany 3%, and so on. So this is actually a good chart in order to tell us where is the growth coming from. Now, but how is travel impacted? Now, we know that travel is picking up, but it is localized as a result of now, the lockdown measures have been eased. And but there's still the fear of contracting the virus coming from the tourists, coming to our community, or even the tourists themselves have concern of contracting the virus when they travel. Last year, international travel has plummeted by 80 to 90%. And the numbers have actually been brought back to the 1970 numbers. But this year, we hope that things will get a little bit more positive. But the first group of tourists will really be domestic tourism. But we know that domestic tourism cannot completely compensate for the loss from international tourists, because there are certain facilities that domestic tourists will not really make use of. For instance, the 5-star hotels, big convention halls for hosting of MICE events, or even like travel agencies, tour buses, tourist guides. Domestic tourists knows the destination, and they then tend to travel on their own. Second, there seems to be hope and optimism with the creation of travel bubble in order to spur business travel, especially in the second half of last year. But we saw that the condition for COVID-19 is really volatile. So even when countries are just about to launch the travel bubble, when there's an upsurge in the infection rate, the whole plan has to be rolled backwards because of the resurgence of cases. And we have seen that occurring in many places. The other thing is that as we move forward, leisure tourism is expected to recover faster than business tourism. But when we do air travel, it is the business tourists that really subsidize for the plane. They are the ones who pay the higher fare, and therefore it makes it possible for the rest to fly economy. So if business tourism is slowing down, it only means that the airlines would have to increase the cost of fares. So we can expect that moving forward, air travel is going to be more expensive. The question is that why are some countries succeeding in handling the pandemic better than others? Of course, countries with strong and effective governmental institutions, especially those relating to public health, is a certainly important condition, but this is not enough as a condition. Because according to Michelle Gelfand from University of Maryland, we have to actually look at culture. And she saw that there was a difference of what we call tight culture and loose culture. And she defines tight culture is like China, where the society tends to be highly respectful of rules and norms, while a loose culture is defined like the United States or many countries in the West, where the citizens tend to defy and break rules. And Gelfand studied 57 countries and concluded that loose countries had 5 times the COVID cases and 9 times the COVID deaths compared to tight countries. So this is actually quite interesting, because besides the action of the government, society is also important as well. Now let us move into vaccines. Now there is quite a bit of geopolitics surrounding vaccines. And we know that there is a major problem in the distribution of vaccines that go to the rich countries, and countries like the United States and UK tend to do very well in their vaccination program. But we are now in the situation where rich countries that have only 16% of the world's population, they have locked up 60% of the world's vaccine. And because of this, the supply of Western produced vaccine is rather short in supply. And we have the same problem in Malaysia as well. There was just a news item yesterday when the minister was saying that, it's in short supply because of some kind of hoarding that is taking place. And also it might be surprising for many of us to find that even EU have problem getting Western produced vaccines such as Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca vaccines for their population. And now they're starting to look at the option of buying Russian Sputnik 5 vaccine, although this has not been approved by the European Medicines Agency, which is a regulator. Countries like Germany, for instance, says that they will buy Sputnik V vaccine if approved by EU. In the case of Hungary, they have actually gone ahead even without EU approval. Now, very interestingly, of course, the Western media, which has earlier cast doubt on and mistrust on Russian vaccines, now they have to change the tune simply because you don't have enough vaccines to go around. So, you have to change your story now. Now, as far as the take-up rates of the vaccines are concerned, countries which have access to vaccines are aiming to inoculate at least about 70% of the population. This is in order to achieve herd immunity. For COVID-19, it is supposed to range between 50% and 80% of the population. And even as countries try to vaccinate the people, there are some counter forces to this. For instance, there is a strong resistance from highly educated people and health workers towards vaccination. And then there is also negative news, negative publicity surrounding the vaccine. And this is a term as infodemic. Now, in the case of Israel, they lead the world in vaccination rates with 116 doses per 100 people. So there are more doses than people. And then followed by the smaller nations, such as the Gulf states, right? Gulf states. In fact, in our part of the world, we do get travelers, the Muslim travelers from the Gulf states. Many of them have actually turned to Chinese vaccines as well, in order for them to have done so well. In the case of Britain, they have administered 54 doses per 100 people. And in the case of United States, it's 49 people per 100. In the case of China, surprisingly, although they have done a extremely good job in controlling the infections, only 10% of the populations get vaccinated. Maybe because people think, oh, maybe the situation is very well controlled here, so there's actually no need for us to get ourselves vaccinated. Now there is this issue about digital vaccine passport controversy. Of course, all of us wants to travel, but you can't travel if there is a danger that you might pose to the recipient country, right? So the idea of having a digital vaccine passport becomes a popular idea. That is, in this passport, digitally, you can download it on a handphone, maybe to say that you have obtained your vaccination, and therefore you will be considered to be a safe tourist. So this is a way of jump starting the travel industry. But there are some controversy that is connected with this, because apparently this digital vaccine passport could be required by law, and you need to provide evidence of vaccination before you can be allowed to board any airplane. And sometimes it could also be extended across a whole range of activities and places. Like, if you are not vaccinated, you can't go to sporting events, you can't go to stadiums or gyms or theaters. And because of that, there is some resistance towards digital vaccine passport on the grounds that this is discriminatory. And in the case of the United States, there is another issue. The United States, which is the envy of the world in terms of the vaccination rates, United States has not performed well at all in terms of infection, but in terms of vaccination rate under the new president, they have done extremely well. But despite the fact that they have done so well in terms of vaccination, they have recently been hit by a new wave of infections that cast doubts on vaccination as a key to ending the pandemic. So if you're doing so well in your vaccination, why are you having an upsurge in cases now in the United States? And there is a sharp increase in infection in Michigan, raising concerns of an adoption of lockdown measures, and which will surely be resisted if it is imposed this time. So this is really worrisome for the destination, because the risk of infection, despite the tourists having clearance to travel in their vaccination passport. So vaccination passport is not the same as an immunity passport. So even if you have a vaccination passport, it means that you could actually be infected and you could actually be a carrier of COVID-19. So this introduces a new set of uncertainty for travelers, which is not really good news for our travel industry. And travelers will still have to be screened before entering another country, and also the adoption of new normal practices such as social distancing, wearing a mask, maintaining good hygiene. These, I think, will be here to stay within the travel industry. Now, how about jump-starting travel? Now, the recovery of travel and tourism will be slow for countries that are struggling with pandemic management. I think we have just heard the recent presentation by Dr. Chen with regards to Chinese tourists. This is exactly how tourists will be thinking about. They basically have to see the record of a country, how well you have done in controlling the pandemic. So tourists will only go to trusted places. And these are places with good governance and health system. And countries with a strong record of managing the pandemic can actually use them as tourism marketing strategies. For instance, Taiwan, which has done so well, has a promotion, Discover Taiwan, and showcasing themselves as a trusted place, that we have good governance, we got a good health care system, and we don't have a problem with infections. So this now becomes one of the points for promoting a destination. Now, basically, there could be two approaches taken, both by national and local governments. One approach is to redesign their tourism strategies to focus on environmental protection, maintain health protocols, and keep money within the economy. And we know that because of COVID-19, tourists, especially the younger tourists, our recent presenter, Dr. Chen, did mention that even for the Chinese tourists, they are the millennials, the young ones, right? They are more concerned about environment, about sustainability issues and all that. So one of the things that the countries could do is to look into these issues. Now, I've seen a video about how during this period of lockdown, Bali, for instance, have taken steps to clean up the river, which is heavily polluted. So this is really something which is the right thing to do, right? During this time, to look after the environment and present yourself, after the spring cleaning. A second is what we will actually see is countries are going to compete for the dwindling tourist dollars by using discounts to fill hotels and encourage travel. So there's going to be quite a bit of discounts. The fact that even as these tourism facilities are now really short of money, they would have to give discounts in order to bring the tourists in. Now, what are the travel trends after the pandemic? So these have come from many sources. One is from Brand Chesky, the CEO for Airbnb. He says that people would now begin to look for a meaningful time with family and friends, especially during the lockdown when we could not even touch base with our family members. But travel would have to be more flexible. People are also working from home because of now, with the internet facilities, we can basically work from home. And also because of the lockdown, we had to work from home. And there's going to be a drop in mass travel. That is what Brian Chesky was saying. And some people think that travel is going to be short haul breaks to family destinations, and driven also by domestic demand in the short term. That means that for promotion, we need to focus on the middle and high end segment of the local travelers, so that they are the ones, if you want them to spend, they're the ones who will be able to spend more. There's also going to be more conscious travel. They're going to be more selective on the choice of travel, their surroundings, the local people, and also smart travel to low risk destinations. There could be vacations, yes, combining work with vacations. So instead of short haul, you can actually go for a longer vacation, but you combine your vacation with work, because these days you can actually be connected with the internet and you can do work under under a very nice palm tree at the beach. And there's also safety and flexibility of the consumer, that you know that the booking is protected because things can change at a very short notice. So there must be flexibility on the to be able to change your travel plan on a short notice. Now, the WTTC and Oliver Wyman has prepared a report on the recovery and beyond, looking at the future of travel and tourism in the wake of COVID-19. This report looks for trends in demand, evolution, health and hygiene, innovation and digitization, and sustainability. So 4 main areas. And one of the recommendations is that governments should continue supporting travel and tourism throughout the recovery period while removing travel restrictions. So we have to adjust to the new normal. Domestic tourism is first to recover, that we know, we have already seen the signs. Then it will be followed by short-haul regional travels. For instance, Malaysia to Singapore, Malaysia to Brunei, Singapore to Thailand. So that will be the next one within the region itself. And medium haul between regions, and finally international travel. So that is the way travel will unroll. So tourism organizations should direct their early marketing efforts in order to provide incentives for domestic and regional travel, as well as to encourage residents to explore nearby destinations. Even within the country, there are many destinations that you will not go when you can travel internationally. But this is the time for countries that have diverse tourism products to encourage people to explore the other parts of the country. So this is one angle that could be taken by the tourism boards. And government should provide incentives to consumers for travel spending. And some of the incentives could include specialized insurance or subsidized holidays off work, guarantees for medical care while traveling, and direct cash or voucher subsidies for holidays. And given the concern for health and safety, players need to move to a more seamless, contactless, end-to-end travel experience through enhanced technologies. So minimize the touching things, even doorknobs and all that, doorknobs of hotels. Of course, there are also some digital initiatives by IATA, Air Focus, One ID, World Economic Forum, Known Traveler Digital Identity, and so on. The next we will have to cultivate resilience. Based on the industry feedback, there's going to be increased interest on sustainable destinations. So government and destinations should capitalize on this renewed interest by establishing guidelines to further enhance wildlife, environmental protections through engagement with the private sector and the local communities. So the question that we can ask for our home governments, have the tourism board and ministries gone to sleep during this time? Or were they really active in trying to see how can they present their destination to be more sustainable, come up with guidelines for wildlife, because this is going to be the area of interest. Yeah. Earlier we saw that crisis means danger and opportunity. Do we make use of this crisis opportunity during this crisis in order to reinvent ourselves? Making our destinations more attractive to tourists. And public and private community should partnership. We should encourage further public and private community relationships in order to nurture local communities at the destination. And of course, the engagement of all stakeholders is really crucial for us to develop inclusive and sustainable tourism strategies. This is also the time to promote less known destinations so that we can extend economic benefits to the local people beyond hotspots. And tourism business that are unable to cope with refunds at the time. So the government should try to help tourism businesses, like first the airlines, right? You make reservations and the whole flight is cancelled, and they don't have the money to pay. So in which case they will have to give vouchers, But the travel businesses are really stressed out. So this is a time for the government to give some kind of support so that they can continue operating as tourism business. There should also be standardization of the treatment across operators to ensure consistent consumer protection across the travel and tourism sector. Now people are more conscious, because I do not know in your case how many of you had canceled the flights. I have a few actually with the airlines, because you have your travel plans, you book ahead of time in order to take advantage of the fares, and then the flights are canceled. And can you get your refund? Are they quick in responding to you? Or when you try to contact them, the telephone line is off, the internet is off, you cannot reach them. It really, this is the time when consumers wants to be protected. Yeah. Now, as my last slide, in conclusion, the road ahead is really still uncertain, much as we want the situation to look much better now that we are in 2021. We can still expect many challenges along the way. One thing is that we need greater cooperation between governments and within governments, and then also between governments that travel in sector as well as local communities, as well as greater cooperation within the sector itself. So this is a time for work to be done within the various stakeholders, within the parties that are involved in the travel industry. Everyone is in need of ease the burden of the travelers, to put in place safeguard measures to restore traveler confidence, which is really important for the industry to recover. Now, one thing is that bad as the effect of the pandemic is, there are still some basis for optimism. The first thing is that the global economy has rebounded, with the two biggest economies, the United States and China, showing high growth of rates, and this will certainly help in global economic resurgence. So this is a good point, because you do need economic growth for the travel industry to be back on its feet again. And the second thing is that from the Duke University Global Health Innovation Center, they estimate that by this year, there are going to be enough doses of vaccines to inoculate 70% of the world's population. So these are at least some good news, that we can ponder about, and we can only hope for better days ahead for tourism. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victor Wee, for giving us some glimpse of what would travel be like after the COVID pandemic. It's a very realistic discussion, and I think you were able to really balance what's happening as part of significant issues. For now, travel may look different in a number of ways, and people can expect to explore a world of face masks, physical distancing, closed businesses, and weeks of quarantines. But what changes can travelers expect in both short and long term? I think this would depend on how fast or how creative or innovative our governments could be in terms of preparing our destinations. Examples would be expecting fewer crowds and experiences at tourist magnets. Airlines will have to balance safety and profits, just like any other businesses, and weary travelers will have to regain that confidence and trust. And having said that, Dr. Wee gave us a glimpse of what's happening on the ground in terms of vaccination rate in several countries, and the rather controversial digital vaccine passport. Part of reopening and recovery means that destinations, attractions, hotels, airlines will need to demonstrate to the potential visitors that they are doing everything that they can to minimize the risks as they travel, and once they are in the destination, by following best practices. Destinations with good practices in managing the spread of the virus will spell the difference in terms of getting ahead in reopening borders and ultimately build trust and confidence of the travelers. So thank you very much, Dr. Wee. And I give the floor back to you, Dr. Jenny.
And I have to unmute myself again. Thank you so much, Dr. Beth, and thank you, Professor Victor. It's always a pleasure to listen
Thank
to you. I always learn something new every time I interact with you, and I'm always happy to have you as one of our speakers in this series, sir. All right, so moving on to our fourth speaker this afternoon, we have Mr. Mohammad Nalendra. Mr. Nalendra is a consultant, a social entrepreneur, an industry speaker who's dedicated to the development of sustainable tourism, specifically in Indonesia. He graduated from Monash University, Australia, with a master's in international sustainable tourism management, and started his own entrepreneurial career by establishing Wise Steps Consulting in 2020 as part of Wise Steps Indonesia. In 2018, he joined the Global Sustainable Tourism Council as an authorized trainer in Indonesia and delivered many sustainable tourism training programs classes in the country. He also joined the Bali Tourism Board as advisor to the chairman in 2018. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Mohammad Nalendra.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jenny. Please, I will share my screen first. Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to ASEAN Tourism Research Association webinar, and I hope you are fine and safe wherever your location is. And firstly, I'd like to appreciate ATRA for conducting this amazing seminar and feel honored to be part of this. And thanks for Dr. Jenny and ATRA, Dr. Aragon, and the colleague for the invitations. And so in these sessions, I'm going to discuss related to how tourism in Bali has been impacted by the pandemic and how we deal with it. And then ultimately, how we could attract international tourists, including China and Middle East market. And as we know that this pandemic is one of the worst crises that we have never even imagined. So these presentations is the result of the discussion with the chairman, and will be divided into three main parts. And firstly is why, how bad the COVID-19 impact to our tourism. And then the what sessions will be discussed about the destination recovery model. And then the third part will be how we manage the course of actions. So tourism has been a priority sector and contribute 4.11% of the Indonesian GDP in 2017. So this is one of the major sector and has been prioritized by the governments. It also attracts more than 16 million international tourists, including China market as major market, also Australia and small number of Middle East. Of course, due to the pandemic and border closure, the tourism industry is one of the most impacted industry. And so we can see in these slides that our government has closed the international border since April 2020. And then in 2020, we're supposed to target 18 million international arrivals, but due to pandemic, only 4 million after the closure. So in other words, there was a significant decline, around 88% in December 2020 compared to the 2019 level. So in terms of revenue, the realizations approximately generated USD 3.2 billion, far from the target, which around 21 billion US dollar. So the impact is really heavily on us. 3.4 million people depends on tourism and creative economy sectors, and 2 million of them are losing their jobs. So it's really significant to our tourism. And that we could say that this pandemic hits Bali tourism harder than the 2020 attacks. As you know, the Bali experienced twin bombings at 2 popular nightclubs and devastated tourism industry in Bali. And it was pretty tough situations. But the pandemic situations actually much worse than 18 years ago. Hotel occupancy down to nearly zero and many people unemployed as Bali economics almost 70% depends on the tourism economy. So in terms of the economic growth, we experienced minus 12.8%, the worst amongst other provinces in Indonesia, and lost around 9 trillion rupiahs. So it's really heavy. And as we discussed about the China market, before pandemic, there was an uptrend on the Chinese tourist visitations to Bali. However, after the lockdown, the number has declined significantly from 1.1 million to only 117,000. So the Chinese customer profile before pandemic who visit to Bali is mostly GIT or group inclusive tour using chartered flights. And then based on our data in Bank Indonesia, this market's average spendings is around 1,057 US dollar per person per visits. Compared to Thailand is around 2,026 US dollar. And this data is extracted in 2018. And then also the favorite themes of the travel is the shopping and culinary actually. And they mostly coming from the second and third tier city in China. And this is a Bali tourist market profile pre-pandemics. So you can see the bubble diagrams. It shows the length of stays and also the spending per trip in Bali. So in 2017, the largest international tourists visiting Bali, followed by Australia, India, England, and Japan. But in terms of Middle East market, there actually was a convincing growth in 2017, about 36.5% the growth compared to the last year. In a number around of 28,000 tourists is coming from Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Lebanon. So the Middle East market was influenced by the visitation of the King Salman, and also is influenced by the direct flights from Doha and Dubai directly to Bali. And this is, if you see the little bubble here, it's Saudi Arabia, right? So actually the average spending from the Middle East market was around 2,000 US dollar per trip. It's actually above international tourist average spending in Indonesia. It's around 1,200 USD. So right now, at the moment, Bali tourisms mostly depend on the digital nomads and domestic tourists, because main source of market from the Jakarta is looking for the place that combine between vacation and work, like Professor Victor say that. So instead of work from home, so we introduced like WFB or work from beach. So it's they require to gain the high speed of the internet, and as well as the cheap villas for the accommodations. And the part two, our destination recovery model. So basically, we have 4 main programs in terms of to recover the tourism in Bali. So the first is CHSE certificate, or cleanliness, health, safety, and environmental sustainability. And then travel corridor, hybrid MICE, and national promotion programs. But this is supporting by the ongoing national level of the programs, such as the recovery programs, incentive, and then the financial restructurization, and also the tax. And then digital innovation. So we encourage many destinations to establish like virtual tour, and then big data management. And also for Bali itself, we realized that the tourism itself is really our economy, Bali economy, is really heavily depend on the tourism. It's almost 70%. So we have to like diversify our products that we will talk later. And then Indonesia Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy has embarked on an aggressive effort to initiate tourism recovery, including proposing soft loan programs worth 9.9 trillion rupiahs, or equals to 712 million US dollar, and also prioritizing vaccination for the tourism frontliner. Mostly they come from Bali. And then also the idea for the issuance of a visa with a 5-year validity targeting international visitors. And then the government is also ensuring strict compliance with the COVID-19 safety protocols by issuing penalties for tourists who flout the rules. And then the part 3, we're gonna discuss about the course of actions. The program ones, maybe you have heard about travel corridor arrangement or TCA. So the objective is the preparing special procedure for the foreign tourists. And Indonesia officials are proposing this kind of strategy with several countries, including the China and then Middle East, Singapore, Netherlands, and as well as the South Korea. But we still consider as the country deemed successful in containing the spread of the coronavirus, have a high vaccination rate, and could offer reciprocal benefits. But the Bali Tourism Board also suggests for these programs, one of them is the tourists must handled by the travel agent to prepare for any unwanted situations. And then the tourists already vaccinated and bring health passport to show the negative PCR test. And then also recheck in the airport with the antigen test. And then also we always looking for the standard operating procedure for the positive tourists. And then also the tourists have to book in our the green zone. So the green zone including Ubud, Sanur, and Nusa Dua. And the second programs, this is related to the previous speaker say that the destinations destination decisions is affect for the safe. Is it the destinations apply for the better health systems? And there are some interesting findings from Bloom Consulting about tourist behavior during pandemic. So although the reduction of disposable income in a major consequence of this crisis, it will not be the main reason behind tourists refusing to travel. So based on this this survey, 64% of the respondents feel unsafe traveling, and only 15% said no income. So regarding the most important factor for choosing destination, 53% said that a good healthcare system and then good crisis management and low COVID-19 cases. The 3 factors will be the most considered factors in the choosing a tourism destination. So based on these facts that we launch a programs called CHSA, or Cleanliness, Health, Safety, and Environmental Sustainability, which consists of the guideline and certifications, covers some subsectors like hotels, restaurants, tourism attractions, transportations, homestay, diving, and golf. So hopefully in these programs can leverage the awareness of the tourists that the destination is still safe. And then the third programs, we encourage the in Bali to conduct, we call it hybrid MICE or Omni MICE. In other words, like online and offline conference. One of the example that we have already conducted is a Bali Democratic Forum in 2020 in Nusa Dua, and then also some of the central government's events was held in Bali with the same systems. And before this suggestion, actually the industry player have already made innovations. I'm going to show one of the videos called Bali Revival 2020. So the industry players has already made an innovation during pandemic, how to cope with the lockdown, as well as the MICE downward trend. say one of the examples on how we deal with the tourism downtrend. And then the fourth programs, it's all about the national tourism promotions, because now Indonesia has published to trigger domestic tourists to come to some of the destinations in Indonesia. So we call it di Indonesia aja, or in Indonesia only. So the objective is to encourage Indonesians to travel within the country. And then to prepare for the safe destinations, the central governments prepare for the vaccination, especially for the Bali tourism employees. And this program was started in January 2021. And the target is 70% from the Bali populations. And to aim the herd community was the first steps in the economic recovery, and to support the green zone area, which is in Ubud, Nusa Dua, and Sanur. And the supporting programs, as we know, that the Bali tourism economy is mostly depend on the visitor economy. So now, after the pandemic, we now rethinking about our tourisms to make a diversification on our products. For tourism itself, that we can establish like wellness tourism, as in Ubud already like yoga package, as well as the environment is already established there. And then health tourism, we have a collection of the international standard of hospital. So we hope that the health tourism can increase the length of stay on the tourist stations. And what interesting is that we have to diverse the industry from the majority of the tourism. So the secondary industry is from fishery and also agriculture. So we encouraging Bali to develop exports of marine and fishery products. One of them is Bali salt, originated from Pemutaran Buleleng, which can be exported to Japan as much as 2 tons every month. Besides having a function for food, Bali salt is also used for the spa treatment in Japan. And then, yeah, so the agricultural sector, one of them must be started for this sector. What surprised is that after tourism did not work, there were many farmers from the elite, former general manager. They started to farming, and this really happened in Bali. So I guess we more on awareness on how we develop our agriculture to excel and make it resilience when the pandemic is will happen again. Yep, maybe that's all. Thank you so much. I give it to the moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muhammad Nalendra, for sharing to us the tourism recovery model of Bali, and for giving us a walkthrough of your action plans and courses of actions taken already by your country and by your tourism board. Many countries are looking to domestic tourism to help stimulate economic recovery. In this analysis, we saw that redirecting tourists from foreign destinations to domestic ones helped to fill the gap in about half of the economies. This is therefore an attractive option, particularly where there are existing strong domestic tourism markets. Many countries are also now developing measures to build a more resilient tourism economy post-COVID-19. This includes preparing plans to support the sustainable recovery of tourism, promoting the digital transition, and moving to a greater tourism system, or maybe a greener tourism one, and rethinking tourism for the future, not only for the current situation. So once again, thank you very much, Mr. Nalendra. And after hearing the brief talk of our speakers for this afternoon, we are now open for the question and answer coming from the rest of the participants. And of course, we thank all our participants for generously asking questions, very interesting questions. And of course, I would like to start by asking this question. So I'm going to direct this one to both our speakers, Dr. Jane and Dr. Fasal. So the first question is, For both Muslim and Chinese markets, what can be the more effective marketing and promotional activities that can be done for them to visit more ASEAN countries? So again, the question is addressed to Dr. Fasal and Dr. Jane. The question is for both Muslim and Chinese markets, what are the effective marketing and promotional activities that can be done for them to be able to visit more ASEAN countries? Or maybe we can answer it in the reverse. So how can we attract the majority of this very significant market, the Muslim and the Chinese markets? Maybe I will let Dr. Jane answer first. Dr. Jane?
Thank you, Dr. Bex, and thank you for the question. So I may answer to the part of the Chinese market. And I think that in my presentations, as well as in Professor Victor Wee and the presentation by Mr. Narendra, we all mentioned that the key point is for the tourists, and it's the same for the Chinese. The key points to get them know that this is a safe place, just to ensure that the practice has been conducted in your place. Will ensure their safety. And so this is not just to tell them you are safe, but you also need to give them clear instructions in terms of how they go to visit your places and what they need to do. And they don't mind that they ask you to do something, but what they mind is you just get them there and doing nothing. They will be worried. You need to let them know what procedure they need to go through and what activities they can do or they cannot do. So they need clear instructions on that so that they will feel comfortable in the way that you deal with them. And I think this is the key information. You need to influence their attitudes, so to rebuild their perceptions of the safety air destination. And another thing I would also like to mention is particularly for the Asian destination, even before COVID, the problems for the Asian destination is for the Chinese market, they always have a very tight time schedule, and then they concentrated in the big cities in this area. So I think the pandemic gives us a good opportunity to think of how we can deal with this traditional, this historical problem. And as Professor Victor Wee also mentions that the young generations, they are looking for more responsible tourism. And so this may give us an opportunity to integrate our regional resources and to provide some innovative tourism products. So we may try to think of the regional resources other than the big cities that we have in our Asian destination. And I like the programs that Mr. Narendra showed us in the video, the Drive-In Music Festival. This is a very good example to show not just to the Chinese tourists, but to all the tourists, how the destinations are practicing the safety procedures to ensure the safety of the tourists. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay.
Dr. Jane. And yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Pasal.
Yes, so I think I think I'm not going to touch upon the safety and health. I think Dr. Wee also touched, Dr. Chen also touched. I think these are necessary factors. I mean, absolutely, probably the most concerned factors. But I'm going to just talk a little bit on from a marketing from a Muslim-friendly perspective. I mean, ASEAN is one of the most Muslim-friendly regions in the world, actually, with Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand being very Muslim-friendly, which is why they are sort of ranked high in our ranking. So I can just highlight some of the things that some of the destinations have been doing I mean, we ourselves have been working with some of the destinations. For instance, Singapore Tourism Board, STB, launched a Muslim visitor guide right in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, we did that for them last year. I think in the middle of last year, they launched a Muslim visitor guide, which is now available for anyone who wants to visit or who planning to visit later to download and look at it. Now, actually, they are looking at a few new additions to that. If you look at Hong Kong Tourism Board, ran a social media campaign. They did some video campaigns as well, exactly targeting the Muslim market. This was right in the middle of the pandemic. I'm talking about last quarter of 2020. If you look at what Taiwan is doing, Taiwan has been very aggressive in wanting to target the Muslim market. They have been re-looking at all their hotels and restaurants to see how they can make it Muslim friendly in preparation for travel opening. They also actually, I think just this week, they announced that they are opening a Muslim history museum or something like that. They made a big function for the launch of the Ramadan program. Taiwan has been very actively doing things. So you see different destinations have been trying to do different things. Spain, for instance, of course, this is not ASEAN. We just did a couple of webinars for Spain tourism, marketing Spain, and that webinar was to market Spain to travel agents in Indonesia and Malaysia. So you find different things that destinations are doing. I think what's important is not to stay silent, because if you stay silent just because travel is not happening right now, I think you have to do things. You have to keep your brand in the mind of the traveler. Both B2B and B2C, both are crucial. Both the travel stakeholders plus consumers. You need to keep the brand in their minds. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Faisal. So let's not be quiet and start to do something while we wait for the reopening of these borders. We have to come up with innovative, really strategic plans on how we can mobilize the travel industry and the different sectors. I would like to address the next question to Dr. Wee. And this is a rather predictive question. And I'm not sure if there's an answer already, but I'll pass it on to Dr. Wee. Dr. Wee, the question is for you. Given that there is already a vaccine for the virus, what is the estimated date for travel tourism to recover and be back on its regular operation to gain their losses? Dr. Wee?
All right, this question is obviously extremely important for our industry, but it is very difficult for anybody to make any clear predictions about it. I think when Deutsche Bank was looking at the situation last year, they thought that the industry could actually be recovering if you're looking at 2023. So they're actually looking at next year and the year after that, when the industry could actually get back on its feet again. But as we know now, the issue surrounding the vaccine is that the ideal case is that we can have enough vaccine to vaccinate everybody, right? Both people from the developed country as well as the developing country. But currently what is really happening right now is that because of the vaccine hoarding by the rich countries, there's not enough vaccines going to the poorer countries. So you have cases, for instance, mutations of the virus in South Africa that has gone to the parts of developed country and actually causing problems in Britain and other places. And recently there is also this mutation from India infecting people in California. So the fact is that if there is this vaccine hoarding, the developed countries are still not protected. Because the places that do not have the vaccination, a high rate of vaccination, these are the places where the virus itself could actually be mutating themselves. So it becomes a very difficult situation, and countries that seem to be have pretty well controlled as far as the infections and death of COVID-19 goes, these are not the countries that really want to go for vaccination. In fact, even talking about a country like Malaysia, whereby priority is given to people from the age of 65 onwards to register themselves in order to get the vaccination, which is provided by the government free of charge. But the take-up rate is very poor. So now the whole thing would have to be opened up. So, and we are not even sure in terms of the direction of the mutation of the virus. There are some speculation that as the virus begin to mutate, it will actually become much less fatal. You know, it will actually go the way like the influenza virus would go. That is one speculation, but yet we do get mutations in which it leads to complications and it leads to death. So even as countries are coping with the situation that we think things are pretty well under control, and we could also have some kind of a travel bubble and all that, and then something comes up again. In the case of even like Germany now, they are afraid that you begin to have a third wave. So we actually do not know. Although in the hearts of everybody involved in tourism, we want the recovery to happen as quickly as possible. People in the industries are holding on as much as they could, right? But I think the official position is that this year doesn't look as if we are going to get any strong pickup. Maybe we can then begin to look at the next year and the year after that. But it largely would have to depend on the behavior of the virus itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wee. Indeed, it's very difficult to predict that question, but it's very important for all of us. And of course, this is a concerted effort, not only for the government, but all the sectors of the industry, including the citizens of each country. It's not a matter of what the capacities which our countries can do in terms of curtailing this virus, but we are all on it together, I guess. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wee. And I would like to address this question to Dr. Nalendra. Dr. Nalendra, this one is for you. There is a talk about the travel corridor between Singapore and Batam Bintan, and due to the lower number of COVID-19 cases. Can the same be done with Bali, especially since it relies heavily on tourism, whereas Batam at least has experts. Samples are manufacturing and food. So can this be replicated in Bali, the one that we had in Batam and Bintan?
Yeah, thanks for the questions. So this kind of the programs, it has to be monitored very carefully. So it's very dangerous to see new cluster from this kind of programs. So that we have to ensure that the protocols and then the standard procedure is really right on the implemented on the field is very strict. And as I mentioned before, that the Bali Tourism Board has suggested that the tourists who visited in Bali must handled by the travel agent, because if there is a unwanted situations, they can handle by making coordination with the travel agents. And then we have to monitor as well for the tests. I mean, like to show the negative PCR on the passport, and then we have to optimize the green zone first, and then we evaluate how it is goes. So yeah, I guess it's kind of optimist that it can be copied in the Bali, as well as we have strong evaluation system, as well as the controlling the situations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalendra. So it's not really something that you can easily replicate from one place to another. So I think that's the key. So it requires careful evaluation and assessment. Thank you very much for that question and for the response, Dr. Nalendra. And I would like to address this question to all our speakers for this afternoon. This is a very important question because I know that a lot of educators from the ASEAN regions are present in this webinar. So this question is addressed to all of you. what can you advise to the tourism and hospitality universities in terms of marketing the tourism and hospitality courses? I think the root cause is that, the industry is down at the moment. Most of the sectors in tourism and hospitality sectors are closed. And so there's this negative perception that, the students enrolled or the graduates will not be rightfully employed in this industry. So what can you tell our academics and students in terms of the programs that they've chosen within the tourism and hospitality? Maybe we can start with you this time, Dr. Nalendra.
Okay, yeah. So actually, yeah, it's really hard. These students now is really confused about how their career because of the tourisms now getting realized that's really volatile. And then yeah, my suggestion is every crisis actually it can be rebounds, but the question is when, right? So I think we still need lots of students from the marketing for the tourism hospitality, because when it's already rebounds, and we need lots of employees in, as well as the experts to help the recover of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalendra. Dr. Jane?
I think for me, the message to give to the students would be, if we look at the history and the research, it shows that tourism is always the first one to be recovered after every crisis. So for this pandemic, tourism is not the only one that was negatively affected. But we know that is one of the most affected. But the history and the research shows that tourism is always the first one to recover. And after every crisis, and tourism always showed a strong recover. So it's not just recover to the pre-crisis level. It actually goes to a higher level. So this shows us a very huge potential in tourism industry. We require higher skills and knowledge of people in this area, and we need a large number of them. So that's my message I would give to the students.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jane. That's very positive. Let us elevate the knowledge and skills of the students and the faculty alike. May we hear now from Dr. Fasal?
I think it's a tough question, of course, but however, disruptions are normal in the industry, but only difference is that this disruption came too fast for us. So however, with all disruptions, there are opportunities. I mean, as students, definitely these type of disruptions, the thing about this disruption is everybody is sort of back to ground zero. They're rethinking. I mean, this is the word that they keep using: rethinking tourism, reimagining tourism. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in terms of for entrepreneurship, in terms of coming innovation. I think. And especially for new students, who are graduating, coming into the marketplace. I mean, if you are looking at, one is to look at the traditional jobs which were there in the tourism industry, maybe tougher, but look beyond that, look for opportunities beyond that, look for innovation, because a lot of innovations are going to happen, and travel has been one of the areas that a lot of innovations keep happening. And definitely these kind of disruptions allow you to rethink and come up with new ideas, and when you're a student just getting out of university, you can take a lot more risk than people like us.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you very much, Dr. Fasal. We have to be risk takers and opportunity seekers, and this is actually the best time for us to reconsider all of that as we strategize individually as advocates of this industry. And of course, I would like to hear now from Dr. Hui.
Yeah, I can pretty much empathize with students. You have both the new students as well as the graduating students. Graduating students, some of them would have actually graduated this year. They would actually be going into empty space, because when they go into the tourism study, they were very hopeful that they land up in good jobs, whether in a hotel or in a travel business and all that. And suddenly, when they graduate and you don't have anybody catching them, so I could actually understand how they feel. It is almost like a kind of a disappointment and letdown. But during this period, it is very important for the students to try to see what they can do. Because when we look into the hospitality studies, when you get into tourism, there are so many skills that are actually involved in becoming successful in the industry. So this is the opportunity for you to try out different things now. Now that you do not, there might not be a ready tourism job for you, because the tourism businesses are shrinking. Some of them have gone into a state of dormancy. So it is good for them to try to do other things. But for the new students or the people who are thinking about tourism studies, my belief is that tourism will actually rebound, like what Dr. Chen is actually saying. Because if you look at the long-term trend, tourism and travel has become a lifestyle. You look at travel as if it is your handphone. Can you be without your handphone? Not these days. You would have to have your handphone. And travel is pretty much like that. So when when people get used to COVID-19, and the COVID-19 is going to not last forever and ever, it will even eventually subside and disappear. And then you will see the rebound of travel. In fact, even now, there is almost people wanting to travel with it is almost like a pent-up demand. Everybody really wants to travel again, as long as when the opportunity presents itself. So for the new students, I think that maybe they should try to do a good job studying, but it's a good chance that when they graduate, there'll be a job waiting for them, and it's going to be a reinvented tourism industry. Because in many places, the tourism industry itself is going to be more different. They would have to make use of more smart technologies, of more IT, Internet of Things, and these are the things that the young students are actually good at. So and the industry itself will have to reinvent itself, simply because the tourists themselves will have a new set of the requirements. So for the new students, I would say that actually when you look at the tourism industry, this is a blip. It has actually dropped because of the situations we're in, but it's not only tourism that's hit, the other industries also hit as well. But when the situation is right, the industry is actually going to rebound again. So are you looking at the short-term trend? This is really short-term, where you see the whole thing has dipped. But if you look in terms of the long-term trend, tourism have actually started picking up since the 1950s. And it has crossed, 1 trillion. 1 billion in traveling, and in terms of receipts, over $1 trillion. That is before the pandemic, and it will have to pick up again. Maybe not immediately, but it will have to pick up. So actually, in terms of the prospects for tourism industry, this is not an industry that you should actually say, it's an industry that you got to leave. You have to leave the industry. I think it is an industry that still have potential, simply because of the lifestyle of the people in the 21st century.
That's very enlightening, Dr. Wee. And we thank you for responding to that thought-provoking question coming from the academic side. And I think I got a lot of very specific questions in the Q&A tab. So perhaps this could be answered by our speakers beyond this webinar session. And I'm going to proceed now with the final question, and I'm going to allow all our speakers to answer this one. So, forward-looking, what other types of opportunities should we expect to spike in popularity after or beyond COVID-19? So, following our theme, forward-looking, what other types of opportunities should we expect to spike in popularity after or post or beyond COVID-19? So, you can actually frame your answers in the context of both the Chinese and the Muslim markets, or you can actually generalize it in terms of opportunities in the industry beyond COVID-19. So that's the final question. And may I ask, of course, Dr. Fasal to start?
Okay. I wish I had the answer. I think from a Muslim travel point of view, I think simply because Muslims are a younger population, as we know, younger population will travel earlier, and I think Dr. Chen also mentioned that Muslims are a very younger population. You know, they are, as I said, the median age is only 27 years. I think they are going to start traveling, and there are some trends, I think, which already started before COVID. I think those things, especially when it comes to sustainable travel, when it comes to community consciousness while traveling, social consciousness, social activism while traveling, I think these kind of things are something to really look out for, because this was a trend which was already there just before the COVID, and it was picking up, and it got disrupted in 2020. But I think that's an area to keep an eye on. You know, how, I mean, this is definitely, I think, you know, people are becoming more conscious of their environment, of the community, of everything. So social activism is becoming key, and how do you enable that with technology? How do you make it easier for these especially younger travelers to not just enjoy the destination, but contribute back to the communities that they are traveling? I think that's probably a place to sort of keep an eye on.
Thank you, Dr. Fasal. And may we call next Dr. Jane?
Thank you, Dr. Bates, for the question. I think from my point of view, for the Chinese markets, the some changes in the Asian destinations is needed. The mindset change is needed. So instead of focusing on the urban destinations, the big cities, I think we should try to rethink of our natural resources in the regional places, which will provide a new form of the tourism to the a new form of tourism to the whole market, not just to the young market, as well to all the family tourism or the business tourism as well. And another one I would like to mention is about the cultural products in Asian destination. I know when I was doing the seasonality phenomena in the Southeast Asian countries, I noticed how diverse cultures across the Asian destinations. According to research on the Chinese markets, it shows that the Chinese markets has low interest or low involvement in the cultural tourism products in Asian destinations, which is quite surprising to me, because the Chinese tourists, they actually are quite interested in ethnic tourism in China. So ethnic tourism in China has been developed a lot. And so I think one possible reason might be because the cultural products in the Asian destination was not well delivered or well presented to the Chinese market. And they may perceive that the culture in the Asian destinations as the Asian culture, which is similar to the Chinese culture. So they may not see or they might not notice there is actually a diverse cultural products in across different Asian destinations. So I think we may need to try to think of a way how we can present our cultural products to the Chinese. So that would be something I would be thinking of. Thank you.
Thank you you very much for sharing, Dr. Chin. And would like to hear now from Dr. Nalendra.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. And as we know that the COVID-19 changed the customer behavior or tourist behavior from the preference in mass tourisms and changed to less polluted, less populated destinations. And then they are now is more health consciousness. And then based on our research and another research say that they really wants to go to the nature destinations with lots of fresh air, and then the pure environments, ecological environments. So that maybe, in my opinions, themes like sports tourisms, wellness tourisms, and then nature tourisms. But we have to put the nature in the central. For example, like sustainability and responsible tourism also has to be in the center too. So between wellness and nature, there's a combination, like good teams, and as well as the sports with nature as well. And for example, the wellness tourisms like yoga, and then we have also lots of traditional herbal. This is also can be new attractions in our destinations and facing the new customer perceptions and behaviors post-pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalendra. And I think now let's hear it from Dr. Wee. Dr. Wee.
When we look at the demographics, actually in the next 5 years, the bulk from the travelers are really going to be the young travelers. Am I on? You can
Yes,
hear me?
Yes,
We can
Dr.
hear you, sir.
Yes, okay. Because my laptop is giving me some strange signals, so I'm not sure whether I'm getting through. So when we begin to look at the demographics of the populations that we have, it's the young travelers that will really form the bulk of our tourists. And we do know that in the process of recovery, it's the younger people that tend to be more exploratory. They tend to be the ones who are more prepared to take risks. Yeah. So for young travelers, I think if the opportunity will be to make use of technology in order to present destinations, because we do know that even the 5G is now going to be rolled out. We can make use of holograms. We can actually make the promotion of any destinations more experiential. So they could also be more hands-on and immersive. So it's not good that the kind of promotions that tourism board has been doing is just very general things, like the promotion that we put on CNN and that kind of but I think for the young people, we need really to target it, to make it really exciting, immersive, and and the other thing is also to present situations with a story behind it. There must be some element of storytelling. It's not just basic tourist information, but the reasons why certain things is done. I think so. This becomes an opportunity to make it participatory, to make it more exploratory. So these are the kind of things that tourism board and all of the promotions that we do. We need to try to think, how can we target for these young travelers so that it becomes more exciting and interesting for them. The other thing is that when we begin to look at their demographics, they're also the senior travelers. Because these days, when we talk about senior travelers, they might be in their 60s, but they still love soft adventure, right? And they're still healthy because they live long lives. They look after themselves very well. And these days, they would also like to travel with family members. So we should provide opportunities for that. And also to make sure that when they travel, the safety, health considerations becomes important. And should there be any emergencies, especially when we talk about attracting them to nature, where if there is an emergency, would they be able to get medical assistance very quickly? So these are some of the considerations that we need to think about. So in a sense, the products that we have, we need to look deeper to see how we can target these products for the different market segments that we will be considering. So I think that becomes the opportunity after post-COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wee, and I really hope that we have more time for more discussions. And I think our audience have started to really warm up and ask more questions at this point. I would like to give the synthesis and thank, of course, our great speakers for this afternoon. Tourism continues to be one of the sectors hardest hit by the corona pandemic, and the outlook remains highly uncertain. And encouraging news on vaccines has boosted hopes for recovery, but challenges remain, with the sector expected to remain in survival mode until well into 2021. The survival of businesses throughout the tourism ecosystem is at risk without continued government support, and although governments have taken impressive action to cushion the blow to tourism, to minimize job losses and to build recovery in 2021 and beyond, more needs to be done in a more coordinated way. Key policy priorities should also include restoring traveler confidence, supporting tourism businesses to adapt and survive, promoting domestic tourism and supporting safe return of international tourism, providing clear information to travelers and businesses, and limiting uncertainty, to whatever extent is possible, and strengthening cooperation within and between countries, building more resilient, sustainable tourism, and of course, tapping significant markets like the Chinese and the Muslim markets. Additionally, the growing number of people traveling internationally makes it essential for destinations to diversify their tourism offering, ensuring that they adapt to the needs of the market segments with greatest growth potential. Dialogue with tourists and product promotion should not only take place face-to-face at the destination, but also online, and with new technologies, exclusive channels may also be used. The practice is an opportunity to rethink tourism for the future. Tourism is at the crossroads, and the measures put in place today will reshape the tourism of tomorrow. We all need to consider the longer-term implications of the crisis while capitalizing on digitalization, supporting the low-carbon transition, of course, promoting and adhering to sustainable development growth, and structural transformation needed to build a stronger and more sustainable, resilient tourism economy. Again, thank you very much to all our great speakers for this afternoon, for generously sharing your insights and for educating all of us. We honor your expertise and commitment in giving us all the information that we need. These are all relevant that we promise and commit to cascade to the different people that we meet within our circles. And of course, we'd like to thank the ASEAN Tourism Research Association for organizing this superb webinar series. And with that, I would like to give the floor back to Dr. Jenny. Dr. Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Beth. And I would like to thank all the speakers. I couldn't stop writing. That's what I've been doing for most of the webinar. And I really have a lot of things to digest, I think, in the next couple of days. But I would like to agree with most of our speakers this afternoon in saying that tourism is always the first one to recover after a crisis. We've learned from historical accounts in different parts of the world, which shows that after a crisis, it's the tourism and hospitality industry that surely bounces back and bounces back much stronger and more resilient than ever before. So today's webinar was aimed to provide insights on the Chinese and Muslim travel markets, their sets of behavior, including the myths and realities as highlighted by Mr. Fazal and Dr. Chen, and also outline what we can expect from these travel markets once international borders reopen. Our last two speakers, Professor Victor Wee, provided rich insights into the current travel climate, specifically with the inoculation activities across the world. And Mr. Nalendra talked about the courses of action and programs to trigger tourism, particularly to Bali and Indonesia as a whole. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have learned many things from today's webinar, and I really did. Now, if your colleagues, friends, and family missed this webinar, please direct them to ATRA's Facebook page, where this is live streamed. And this is also shared on the Lyceum of the Philippines University CITHM Facebook page. You can view and replay this webinar in those Facebook pages. Now, If someone is asked about certificates here, we are providing e-certificates. Please go to this link. These links will be in the chat box as well. So one is for your certificate of attendance, and the other one is a link to a very short survey. We just want to know what your thoughts are, what your insights are, your thoughts and feelings about this webinar. And we want to know what we did well and your favorite and least favorite parts of the webinar. And of course, we'd like to know, there's always room for improvement, and we'd like to know where we can improve this webinar for all of you. So this is a sample of the e-certificate that you will be getting. It will be open for the next 2 hours after this webinar. And these links will also be made available on the Facebook page, as I mentioned. So very briefly, I would like to thank our very energetic moderator this afternoon, Dr. Lilibeth Aragon, in recognition for her contribution to the ATRA webinar series as as a moderator, for this webinar. Thank you, Dr. Beth Aragon. We also would like to, I have a certificate here for being the host and organizer of this webinar. And to Mr. Fazal Fahardin, CEO of Crescent Rating and Halal Trip, Dr. Tingjan Shen, James Cook University, Professor Datuk Seri Dr. Victor Wee, Secretary General of ATRA and Professor at Taylor's University, and Mr. Muhammad Nalendra, founder and CEO of Wise Steps Consulting Indonesia. Thank you very much for your contribution to the ATRA webinar series, particularly to this webinar series titled ASEAN Beyond COVID-19. We also would like to thank Lyceum of the Philippines University, James Cook University Australia, and Singapore campuses for co-organizing this webinar, and to Universitas Panchal, who has actually provided or designed the e-certificates for our attendees. Thank you very much. Yes, I think this is very important, and I would like to spend a minute here to invite all of you once again to the part 2 of the ASEAN Beyond COVID webinar. So on May 6th, we'll be having speakers who will talk about the European and Indian travel markets. And of course, we will have responses from 1 or 2 ASEAN member states. Talk about, just like what Professor Victor Wee and Mr. Nalendra did, they will have this overview of what is being done in ASEAN countries. On the 27th of May, we have a webinar on advancing the roles of women in ASEAN tourism, and we've got great speakers lined up for this webinar as well. In June, on 17th of June, we have revitalizing the ASEAN MICE industry. So again, this is something to look forward to. And I think this lineup of topics that we have for in this series is definitely going to be a success, I think, for a lot of students, especially those who are looking forward to the webinars organized by ATRA. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po. Terima kasih. CSNE, Dr. Chen, and to the team, the tech team of Lyceum of the Philippines University, of course, headed by Dr. Beth Aragon. Thank you very much for your help this afternoon. From all of us at ATRA, thank you very much.